Q&A with Nicola Willis. Now, I have quite a bit of footage here. I understand that if we run a bit late tonight, you might want to pick up on this tomorrow. If you do, it will definitely be a clip at some stage during the day. But it's worth watching the whole interview. Jack Tame holds politicians' feet to the fire like no other interviewer in New Zealand does at the moment. And I wonder, because it is a face-to-face situation, not an over-the-phone to RNZ or News Talk ZB or whatever, he can actually literally say stop, and they kind of have to stop. And he does it quite a bit. So let's have a look at this to start with. And I've got several clips, right? I'll look through, and if it gets too long, maybe I'll cut one out. But this, people have seen it. Guru's already saying this was roadkill. He asks her about what is inflation, because I'll let the master do it. What is inflation is the first conversation.
Would you agree that introducing new money into an economy without increasing the supply of goods would be inflationary?
It depends how you do it.
If you introduce new money from outside an economy into an economy without increasing the supply of goods, that's a simple equation.
So I think what you're asking me about is the foreign buyers tax, which we're proposing to put on. And our view on that tax is that it will have a couple of impacts. One is it will encourage more people to come to New Zealand and invest in our businesses, productive growth, entrepreneurs who want some capital to innovate with. The other effect that it will have is it will bring some revenue into New Zealand that will help fund our tax reduction plan. Right. Now, you have to look at our tax reduction plan as a whole, because in its first year, you will be aware, it saves more money than it spends.
So $740 million in new money you are essentially introducing to the economy through that foreign buyers ban or the tax on foreign buyers. That is money that is coming from outside of our economy without increasing the supply of goods within our economy, which is, by its definition, inflationary.
Well, at the same time as we're doing that, we're reprioritising money away from wasteful backroom bureaucracy. We're also
if you haven't seen this, people, you will be dumbfounded as to what her suggestion is to make it not inflationary. Like you'll be dumbfounded. This is the person who wants to be our finance minister.
Finance that money that's currently being spent on contractors and consultants.
This is new money, though. This is no different to if the government just decided to borrow more. It has exactly the same inflationary impact. But we're talking about introducing new money to an otherwise confined economy. This is inflationary.
Well, the effects of that could be a couple of fold.
Could be.
One, you may see that some of that money ends up being used by New Zealanders to save more.
Could be
savings. To
reduce
their debt by paying off their mortgages faster, in which case it's not going to go straight into cycle in the economy.
Right. They may choose to save.
They may choose
they may
to
also
pay their
choose to
mortgages
spend.
off faster.
They may also choose to spend, though, right?
But
on their groceries,
that will mean that money is not in circulation.
If New Zealanders all choose not to spend the
on
money,
their rent.
The second thing that could happen, Jack,
that's the theory, though, right?
Yes, if they choose to
yes. So if every New Zealander saves the new money, it won't be inflationary. So Jack Tame says it's inflationary, isn't it? And the answer she's actually given is, well, if every single person who gets a tax cut saves every single cent of it, then it won't be inflationary, Chewy. That's the answer from our potentially next finance minister.
So just magic then?
Yeah.
Are we going with magic?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good God.
All right.
But
the next one
will still vote for her because they like blue and they don't like red.
How about they're getting into the housing market? And this is the biggest clip we're going to watch, right? I've got like several clips, but most of them are only kind of 30 seconds to 2 minutes. This one's a bit longer, so we'll cut in and out of it. How do you get to your $740 million tax number from allowing foreign buyers to purchase? So how did you get there? How did you make the modeling? Really important. So this is this is Jack delving into how did you come up with that number? Tell us about the modeling.
So what we did was we looked at house purchases prior to the foreign buyer ban being brought in, and we looked at the pattern of purchases. Then we scrolled forward and we thought, well, given house prices have now gone up, given the pattern of where those homes were bought in the past, i.e. they tend to be bought in those areas with luxury homes, the Coromandel, the Bay of Islands, Queenstown.
Nice homes.
And given...
Just think about that, though. What she's talking about, think about New Zealanders she's talking about, the people who buy a second home in Coromandel, Queenstown, Bay of Islands. So that's the market. This is the National Party's market. People who can afford to buy a second home in Coromandel. And for those of you who are in the South Island who don't know, that's about an hour and a half southeast of Auckland. Whitianga, Whangamata, lots of very, very wealthy Aucklanders go there. Obviously Bay of Islands, top of the North Island, the Winterless North, and Queenstown down here, same house price average as Auckland does. So this is what this policy is targeting, is that people. And we've often talked about who is the party of the people. It's certainly not the ones that can afford to buy a second house in a place like Queenstown where the average house price is over $1 million. Just saying.
The luxury type of homes and the prices they will be paying, and the effect that will be had once you bring off a ban at the same time as you're getting rid of the effective capital gains tax in the form of the bright line test. What sort of pattern of purchase can we expect, and what revenue can we expect? And we're comfortable that our assumptions are cautious.
Right.
We had them checked by an external advisor who agrees with us that they are reasonable assumptions, and we're confident in our costings.
Okay, so if you have that big model, that grand model, you still get two numbers at the end, right? A median house price and a total number of house sales.
He's very good, Jack Tame.
So what are those numbers?
And those numbers will vary depending on what exactly happens.
Well, no, to get $740 million, you need to have a median price, an average house price, and a total number of houses.
Yes, that's right.
So what is it?
Well, those numbers will vary, but we have an estimate in our model for those numbers.
And so what is the estimate in your model?
The estimate in our model is that the average price will be more than $2 million, and that we will sell fewer than 2,000 homes. I want to just focus in here.
No.
She tried to keep going.
The average price is going to be $2 million.
More than
$2 million. So what is the average price going to be?
It's going to be more than $2 million.
What is the average price going to be?
Well, it will depend on which homes sell, and real estate agents are saying...
Is not how averages work. Sorry, Nicola, that's not how averages work.
Oh my God!
Averages work by the number of houses sold divided, the total price for all the houses sold divided by the number of houses that are sold. That's how the average works. It doesn't depend on anything else. She does give out a number, and one has to wonder why she struggled so long to get to the number rather than saying it straight away, because she said 4 or 5 times it's variable, and then she gives a number.
This is why we have an average. So what is the median price across all of those homes you're expecting to sell? What is the median price, the average price?
It will depend on exactly what happens, but
Nicola,
it will be about two.
Do you want to be the finance minister?
I do.
You have to give us the average. It doesn't change. The average doesn't change.
The average in our model in its first year is $2.9 million. But
So that was either made up on the spot, and I don't think so, but that was either made up on the spot, or she didn't want to give it out because she knew what it was, and she spent 4, 5, 6 attempts not answering it. Why?
She also said, okay, technically correct, more than $2 million.
Yeah.
But $2.9 million, who says that's more than $2 million? Why wouldn't you say just under 3?
Because now what happens is now we've got that number, we can do the numbers, and I have.
Point is a really good one, Jack, and I want you to listen to it.
No. I want to dig into these numbers, and then we'll give you an opportunity to do that. I'll make sure you have an opportunity. So $2.9 million. Okay. So how many houses will you need to sell at $2.9 million?
Fewer than 2,000.
Fewer than 2,000.
That's right.
How many houses?
So one.
Technically it's 1,725. I've done the numbers. It's 1,725 houses, but it's not just that sell below. That sell for more than $2 million. Remember, it's 1,725 houses averaging $2.9 million that sell to the countries that are allowed to pay tax on it because of our tax treaties. Now, previously, like when foreign buyers were allowed to purchase, they made up 3% of the total purchases. So if 3% of the total purchases are still going to be foreign house buyers, that actually means about 60,000 houses have to be sold in total to get to 1,725 $2.9 million houses. But there's going to be more than that because not all the people buying those $2.9 million houses are going to pay tax on it. Because if you're from China, you have a tax treaty and you're not going to be paying tax on that because you don't have to legally. And it goes round and round and round, and the numbers get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And you can just see how it doesn't stack up. But we'll let Jack keep going.
Was sold to foreign buyers in 2018.
My point that I was trying to make earlier, and I think it's really important your listeners hear it, is this. You cannot compare what's going to happen exactly in our market today with 2018 or even with now, because two big changes.
This is actually fair, but that means their projections are based on nothing. Because if you don't compare it to something, then it's just made up numbers. But it's fair to say you can't compare it to these two times. That's actually fair, but that means we're guessing. Because if you have no data to compare it to make your projections, then you're just making stuff up. Because you have to have some reason to make this projection other than going, well, this is how much we need, so let's just say it's this much. Because that's the only other way you can do it, Chewy.
Pat, you're forgetting an important thing when it comes to National Party policy. Babes. It's the vibe.
Don't call me babes. That was so right.
Yeah,
I know we went for a drive in a
vibes,
car.
Babe. It's just the vibes.
Well,
Don't
let's give her a
harsh the
chance.
vibes
Let's
with
give her a chance
numbers.
to share the vibe.
Happened. The first is that Labor has introduced a bright line test, which means that many people
This is
who own
fair,
a certain property,
but it means how do
like
you
Queenstown
project,
or the
right?
Coromandel,
The bright line test has been put in. Absolutely, that's fair. But that means you've got no way to project.
The second thing that's happened is that house prices have increased significantly.
Sure, again, both of those things are fair. So what are your projections based on? Maybe we'd like to see your numbers, which Jax gets into at some stage.
Is going to recover as soon as you lift that ban.
I'm just doing the maths, okay? Yeah. So in 2018, before the foreign buyer ban was lifted, how many purchases, as a percentage of overall purchases in New Zealand, did foreign buyers?
I don't have that number right
now. I do. It's 3%, right? So if the average price for houses that you're going to sell is going to be 2.9, I've rounded up to $3 million, right?
Oh,
so if the average price is $3 million, even though in 2018 they were just 3% of buyers, they would have to represent 28% of buyers.
Well,
in that top tier. So no. The point is that for your numbers to work, you have to increase the number of foreign buyers almost tenfold from 2018 before that ban was lifted. That's fantastical.
No, Jack, that is not the case.
You, Jack.
What actually needs to happen is...
Do you know the thing I like about what Jack said? The word fantastical sounds like it's got testicle at the end of it. So I'm mature.
That when we lift the ban, we will see foreign buyers entering the market. We will see probably much
We don't
more
know that. This is made up.
In that part of the market.
We have no data because we're ignoring the data.
The next thing that will happen is that it won't just be houses selling
we don't
at
know
that
this.
price point. There will also be houses selling at much higher price points. We're talking...
So what she just said, houses selling at much higher price points, that's called a softball because Jack's ready for that. And he's about to knock that ball out of the park.
$10 million homes.
Okay, so what was the most
$20 million
expensive?
homes.
$20 million home. So what was the most expensive house sold in New Zealand last year?
This is the point.
No.
The
What
market
was the most
last year,
expensive house?
I'm not going to compare the market last year with a market that doesn't...
Because it makes our numbers look bad.
Part of 2022 was absolutely gangbusters. So what was the most expensive house sold in New Zealand last year?
The other thing that's important to remember is that last year there was a bright line test applied over a 10-year period, which meant that anyone who had bought their house in the past couple of years knew that if they then sold it, they would have to pay a full capital gains tax on it. So it's not fair to look at that market and say it's indicative of what's going to happen going forward.
You're talking about $20 million houses,
in some cases, yes.
Okay, well, good news. I've got a photo here of a $20 million house. That was the most expensive house sold in New Zealand last year, Paratai Drive in Bemuera.
So one.
And just check out the interior. Lovely.
One $20 million house last year.
So that
Why
was the
don't
most
rich people have
sold in New
taste?
Zealand last year. $20 million that cost. If you sold 50 mansions for $20 million, 50 of those, okay? So not one like we did last year. If you sold 50 of those, and then you got your $10 million mansions as well, and you sold 50 of those, you would still be more than $500 million short of your projection.
So here's something else, because I did this on Twitter with someone today. Someone said, but what if they were $10 million mansions? So I did the numbers. If you had 10, they need $5 billion of sales. They need $5 billion of sales because 15% of $5 billion is 750 million. So they need $5 billion worth of sales a year to hit their target to foreign nationals who aren't part of tax treaties. If they were $10 million houses, you need to sell 500 of them a year. Right now, as we speak, Chewy, on Trade Me, there are 26 houses listed for either $10 million or more. 26. That means all of those houses have to sell in about the next 10 days. And then for every other 10 days subsequent afterwards, you need to sell another 26 of them. That's how you get to their number based around that $10 million mark, which they're talking about now. Every 10 days, you need to sell about 25 $10 million houses. Right now, there's only 26 of those in the country, but we need 500 of them to be sold a year if they averaged $10 million a year, let alone 2.9. So this is their problem. Their numbers aren't stacking up.
It's just dreams. Like, this is...
I'm sorry to
give you this reputation of the party of, we're the only party that makes sound financial decisions. Labour's terrible at it. The Greens can't do it at all. Where is this reputation come from? They're terrible at it.
Yeah.
They're absolutely terrible at it. Why would you encourage foreign investment into a non-productive asset and then build a house of cards on top of it?
This clip's got 1 minute to go. Let's get to the end of this one clip because this is the biggest part of the conversation.
Over a 4-year period.
No. That's for 1 year. That's for 1 year. We can do the maths right now if you want to do them.
Jack.
No. This is. I mean,
we believe that they're best, and we are very confident in our costings because we think that there will be hundreds of transactions. Right. We think that there will
thousands.
Be
you need thousands. 1725.
We believe that we will get the tax revenue from.
Need thousands. She said hundreds. She said the average is $2.9 million. That's 1725 a year, averaging 2.9 million times 725 gets you to 5 billion. She said the average was 2.9. That means you have to have 1,725 sales a year because 1,725 times 2.9, which is the average, gets you to 5 billion. So not hundreds, over 1,000, nearly 2,000.
And we think that our estimates are cautious, they're conservative, they're based on the pattern of purchases that have happened previously, the pattern of purchases that have happened. In the interest
of transparency and economic credibility.
I'm going to start this again because I want to give it a build up. This is the most important thing any journalist will ask a National Party member, especially the people who are touting this tax cut. This is the most important 60 seconds of broadcasting you will hear this election cycle. Asking about, can we see your numbers? Honestly, it's the most important thing. We all need to listen to it.
Purchases that have happened previously, the pattern of purchases that have happened.
In the interest of transparency and economic credibility, as the person who wants to be the next finance minister, will you commit to releasing your full model?
We have already released the basis of our costings.
The model, will you release the full model that gave you the costings, including that 2.9 million figure for the average house price you're going to sell to foreign buyers? Will you commit to releasing that model?
I don't think it's necessary because I've released my assumptions. I've made it clear that they've been checked. In the interest of
transparency and as a representative of the party that sells itself on its economic credentials, will you release that model? I simply don't think it's necessary, Jack. Wow.
That's the end of that clip, Cherie. Now, we do have some other shorter clips that I want to play, but you want to jump in with anything so far? That's pretty much the housing side of things done.
Yes, I do have something. Just give me 1 second here, Pat. I'm doing a very professional thing here. Bad for time.
I can just play a 40-second clip while you're waiting.
Oh, everything dies.
I'll play a short clip while we're waiting for Chewie. So here's a short clip. This is a little bit about what about in the housing market, the pressure to make those $1.8 million houses. What happens to them? So we talked about this last week. If you've got a house worth $1.8 million and you're selling that to 20 New Zealanders, right? What happens now? Is there not an incentive to make it 2.01 million because then you've got 1 billion Chinese who can buy it rather than 50 New Zealanders who can buy it? What will that do to the housing market?
I mean, if we're to once again reflect on economic theory, there's even...
Oh, Chewie, you come in. Sorry, mate.
Oh, fuck's sake.
Chewie is having trouble. I will play this clip again. I'll keep going till we get Chewie back. So this is asking about the houses that are at 1.8 million.
Every reason to think that if you were seeking to sell a house for $1.7 million, which would be like a 3-bedroom house in Mount Albert, Gucci, that you might be incentivized to increase the price so that you could attract foreign buyers, if indeed foreign buyers are able to purchase.
Yeah.
Well, look, I think that is going to highly depend on what foreign buyers want to buy. And what evidence tells us from the past when we didn't ban foreign buyers was that they tend to want to buy luxury properties, not typical family homes. They typically want to buy in areas that are particularly distinctive, whether that's the Bay of Islands, the Coromandel, Queenstown. And so we don't think that it's going to have a massive effect on properties under $2 million.
Okay, very, very important, right? Very, very important point. Unless they want to buy rental properties. At no point has anyone from National said they can buy one property over $2 million. At no point has that been said. So we must assume now that if you're coming from Australia or Canada or USA or UK or China or Japan or any of these places who have tax treaties, under National, those people can buy as many $2 million houses as they want with no tax take. So yes, the 3-bedroom house in Mount Albert or the 4-bedroom house in Brooklyn or the studio apartment in central Dunedin, that won't be worth $2 million. But you know what I'm saying, is now available for these international buyers to purchase if it hits 2.01 million and have as a rental property, as an investment. They might not want to buy it to live in it. They might want to go to Coromandel or Bay of Islands or Queenstown or whatever, but they might want to buy 10 of them at $2.01 million and rent them out as family homes to New Zealanders who can no longer buy them. So yeah, if people from China, from Canada, because that's one of the places, from USA can now buy properties over $2 million, they will want to buy family homes, maybe not for them to live in, but as an investment, Chewy, especially if they're paying no tax.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this is a policy built for the real estate companies. Bailey's have designed a policy that'll get them some pretty fat commissions. But like, there's one comment I want to highlight here. I'm so confused why people do not want foreign investment. With 3 islands in the middle of nowhere in a recession, we need foreign investment. We're barely in a recession. We'll probably bounce out of that in the next quarter anyway. We're not against foreign investment. We're against foreign investment in an unproductive product. A house makes nothing. It produces nothing apart from returns for the buyer. Why can't we encourage foreign investment into our industry? Why do we have to import everything? You know, this is what's good for economy, not selling mansions to people who barely live here, for selling out citizenship to people like Peter Thiel to build a bunker outside of Wanaka. It's all nonsense. None of this is going to help. The figures don't make any sense at all. And it's just policy for rich people overseas rather than policies that will help the majority of New Zealanders. National don't give a fuck about you.
So this is really important to remember. The number of houses that need to sell per year are 1,725, bought by international buyers that do not live in China, Singapore, Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, India, Japan, Mexico, the UK, and USA. So they can't live in those countries because we have tax treaties. So from all the other countries, 1,725. Now, remember, that also means all of those countries I've listed, they can come in and buy $2 million houses because there's no more foreign buyer ban. So they can still come and buy them. Those ones just won't buy in tax. Now, the last time foreign people could buy, international people could buy property here in New Zealand, the Chinese market made up 36% of purchases. Now, if that's still the case, that means of that 1,725, 600 of them are going to be bought by China. There's no money on those. So that's going to have to be bought by another country's citizens. And then what happens, Chewy, when those people, let's say in Germany, they register their business in London or in Canada or whatever, and then they do it through that company. Because I don't know who it was last week, but it might have been the guy from the CTU, Craig Rennie, said if you can afford $350,000 to pay tax and you can afford an accountant not to pay tax, that's part of the conversation as well. Russian oligarchs, says Steph. I'm going to play another couple of clips. I know we're going long, but I want to get through all these because they're really important. We're okay? Okay, so we are looking at the advice that they got. I've been talking to you about tax treaties. Now, they did get some advice from on tax treaties, and some of the advice they got does point them to being able to get I actually saw there's a story, which I haven't even looked at yet because I saw it as I was signing up, that China has fired a bit of a warning shot across New Zealand's government bow saying you will not be taxing our citizens, National. That came out this evening. We'll have a look at that tomorrow. did they get advice on tax treaties? There is some advice that said they'll be able to get around them, but there's also advice that say they can't. Really interesting part of this. Before they released their document, their taxing, did they get advice on tax treaties, which seems to be the sticking point at the moment?
We have subsequently talked to people about tax.
We have subsequently. Did you get that? We have subsequently. We'll keep going.
Treaties, because the view on tax treaties is that it does depend on whether or not the foreign buyer charge is seen as a tax or not, and it also depends on the country that you're dealing with. So in the case that David Parker desperately brought up during the week, we think he's
desperately brought up, showing what legislation was and the double tax treaty between China, the desperate thing that he showed, that stuff that's written into law, desperate.
Completely wrong for two reasons. One, at the moment, Chinese buyers are totally banned from purchasing houses in New Zealand. And what we're creating is some conditions under which they could buy in certain cases if properties are worth more than $2 million.
But you'll tax them, right?
Yes, that's right. We will make them pay a very significant charge at point of purchase for permission to buy a home. But the second thing is this. This week, the government introduced a bill which would have unilateral tax treatment of digital services. And they did that because countries do from time to time do that. And we reserve the right as New Zealand to do that in terms of our tax treatment. Many other countries around the world tax foreign property. There's no reason for foreign purchases of property, and there's no reason New Zealand shouldn't too.
Except for the non-discrimination provision that is present in many of our tax treaties with countries. So in our tax treaty with China, it says this: it's not possible for residents of China to be subject to any taxation which is more burdensome than the taxation of New Zealand. And
it's important to hear that again, because it says residents of China. Did you hear that? I'll play it again. It says residents of China.
Property. There's no reason for foreign purchases of property.
This is what the legislation says.
Except for the non-discrimination provision that is present in many of our tax treaties with countries. So in our tax treaty with China, it says this: it's not possible for residents of China to be subject to any taxation
we'll come back to that,
which is more burdensome than the taxation of New Zealand. And there is a distinct difference between tax treaties and the FTAs, which you sought advice on when you were developing this policy. So we've been speaking with Professor Craig Elliff from Auckland University. He's a professor of taxation and the director of the New Zealand Centre for Law and Business, a former tax partner at KPMG and Chapman Tripp. And he has real concerns about the policy. This is what he says: about half of New Zealand's tax treaties have a non-discrimination clause, including Australia, Canada, China, Hong Kong, India, Japan, Mexico, the US, and the UK. That non-discrimination clause would mean you cannot introduce a foreign buyer's tax. I would expect a significant possibility of a challenge by the taxpayers, i.e. the foreign buyers. There would also be a significant...
When I heard that, I did wonder what the Taxpayers Union Association is going to be saying about this, Chewy. I wonder if they're going to get up and fight for Labour on this. I just wonder, the Taxpayers Union, the TPU, because, you know, they want to be overt and they want to make sure the correct tax is getting paid to the correct places. I'm sure they're going to get Labour's back, wouldn't you think? Maybe.
Just as an aside, every time I hear it abbreviated to TPU, I think of Toilet Paper University. Just how my brain works.
Very good.
Significant political and legal risk with our treaty partners. The treaty partners could terminate the double tax treaty or negate various parts of the agreement. There are many other political consequences, such as the termination of agreements like FTAs for such a serious breach of international law. Now, that's not just some guy. That is the director of the New Zealand Centre for Law and Business, a professor of taxation at Auckland University. What does he get wrong?
Well, there are other views which interpret those tax treaties differently. There's clear evidence that many of the countries he's listed already do these charges themselves.
Yeah, hang on. These countries do these charges themselves, but that doesn't mean that's not the same thing.
No.
That's like saying, well, you know, Germany's got an autobahn and they can drive as fast as they want on that. So, you know, we can drive as fast as we want. Just because they have the rules and they do it doesn't mean we can. We've got a contractual agreement that says we can't. Just because they do it with other countries doesn't necessarily mean that therefore we can.
And finally, and I think this is really important, let's get in the real world.
This is beautiful.
Do you really think that China...
So what she's about to say to us here, right? Let's get in the real world. She's going to say, but China, they're lovely people. Do we really think that their government's going to do anything about this? I mean, we're letting them buy houses now and just charging them some tax. That's a positive thing. She's selling the idea that China's going to be reasonable. That's what she says, Joey.
These charges themselves. And finally, and I think this is really important, let's get in the real world. Do you really think that China is going to have a diplomatic incident with New Zealand because we say, you know how we banned people from your country from buying houses altogether? Well, now we're going to let them, but the condition is they have to pay a charge. Actually, that's a step forward in terms of their rights with regard to New Zealand, not a step backwards. And so we are confident that this can be diplomatically managed.
Right. So you think this is going to require diplomatic management?
No, I do not think that this is going to trigger the kinds of legal disputes that your professor has referred to.
So she was saying, right, China's going to be reasonable about this. She's going to say, do you really think that China's going to care if we tax their million and billionaires tax when we're letting them buy property? That's what she just said, you know. Now,
if they do get shitty, we just won't sell them milk, and then nothing bad will ever happen.
One other thing, it's the same part of the second story. This is from Newshub. They went to Newshub went to the expert that National pointed them to. Right, National said, go and speak to our expert. He's over there. He will tell you what we're thinking. I want to play you this because this gives you more of an insight.
I have. After asking for that legal advice specifically around the tax treaties, National pointed me towards their own tax expert, Robin Oliver, who used to be the Deputy Commissioner at IRD. And without taking you down into the weeds of international taxation treaties, he says that it is possible to tax the citizens of those countries that we have those double tax agreements with, so long as that they're also not residents in New Zealand and paying tax here.
So we can't tax them unless they're residents here. Now, what did the law say? I replayed it and I repeated it, that you can't charge residents of China. Whereas the professor is saying if they're residents of New Zealand, we can charge them. Listen again.
To tax the citizens of those countries that we have those double tax agreements with, so long as that they're also not residents in New Zealand and paying tax here.
So if they're paying tax here, we will charge them. And if they're residents here, we can charge them. However, the law said you can't do this to residents of China. So there's a juxtaposition there, but there's still one more bit to come, Chewie, right? We heard that word subsequently from Nicola Willis, subsequently. Remember, that means after we released the policy.
But what Robin also told me was that he didn't speak to National until Friday, which is 2 days after they released their tax plan. And they were already getting heat for breaking these international treaties. This is starting to look like a bit of a mess that National is scrambling to get the evidence it should have had before releasing this tax policy. It looks like the government, which has been looks like the party which is gunning to be the government, has been caught off on the back foot and blindsided by these international tax treaties.
There you go. Chewie, there is actually more that I wanted to share, but I think I may do something. I wanted to talk a little bit about, Jack Tame also pulled her up on, they got lobbied by Sky City. And she confirms that. They spoke to Sky City about that taxation. He quizzed her on VPNs to get around the gambling situation. And also what happens if you don't reach your revenue model. And she basically gave a guarantee they would. And in fact, I've just covered off the last 3 clips, so we won't do it again. And my biggest concern about that
trust
is
me, bro.
No, but if they guarantee it, and they can't do it through taxation, then they'll do it through cuts. Because if they guarantee it, they have to do it. And if they're going to do it and they can't do it through taxation, then they'll do it through cuts.
That's always been the plan, Pat. Plan's working as planned. Plan the plan, work the plan. Plan. God, these guys are dangerous. They're dangerously cavalier. They're dangerously unprepared for this. They are not a serious contender. We have to stop thinking in binary terms it's got to be National or Labour.
And what we do have to do is do this for Jack Tame.
Jack Tame is a goddamn legend.
I mean, you could see a couple of times she was like, talk. Now on to the next up. And he was like, no, we're going to finish this one first. So, he does it to everybody. So this is not, I don't think it's partisan from his position. I've heard him and seen him interviewed. In fact, I've interviewed him twice. In fact, we should get him back on. And he basically, I don't think he quite says he hates them all, but he treats them all with equal disdain if they're talking bullshit, and that's great. It's what we should have.
No, it's an
especially from
interview
that fourth estate.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when people talk about the fourth estate, this is what we mean, is that there's so much soundbite media, there's so much clips of like, we've got 2 minutes to talk about what Christopher Luxon's talking about or what Chibi's talking about, that sort of thing. You can't give context. That's why we're doing this. We're trying to put some of our context on it, right? Because it's not served. You've got Q&A, and that's basically the only show in the country that's doing this on mainstream TV. And Jake does an amazing job. We've featured him so much, just eviscerating people, and that's what we want to see. I don't want the press release. I want to show me the meat.
We're going to wrap up the show because I think Shamabel Jacob actually kind of summarized it beautifully for us. And if you follow me on Twitter, you've probably seen this weekend. But after an interview about the numbers, this is a different program. This is TV3. That was TVNZ. This is what well-respected economist Shamabel Jacob had to say.
Shamabel, these numbers have started to unravel around this foreign buyers tax, haven't they?
Oh, I mean, those numbers are just bullshit, to be quite honest.
Just bullshit, to be quite honest.
The potential tax revenue from all the over $2 million properties would be $1 billion based on the last 12 months. So they're assuming that more than 70% of all $2 million plus properties are going to be sold to foreigners. It just doesn't make sense.
We tip our cap to you, sir, for being succinct and to the point. And with that, Chewy, I'm done for the night. But you're welcome to. Have you got anything else you want to throw in there?
I would like to make some sort of bet on an online casino of some sort. At one point, Shamabel's going to flip a table if this nonsense carries on. The man's on the edge.